Montana Territory, May 1879, the first time Nathaniel Jensen laid eyes on her. She was crouched by his barbed wire fence with blood on her hands and ribs showing through her torn dress, a pistol tucked under one arm like it belonged to her soul. He nearly rode past. The wind had been hard all morning, kicking up dust from the dry spring fields, and his mind was on a broken water wheel at the south pasture. But then his horse snorted and stopped short, hooves skidding in the dirt, and Nathaniel saw her. She was barefoot, the skin on her feet raw, and her long dark hair stuck to her face with sweat and dirt. She looked up at him like a cornered animal, one hand twitching toward the weapon. "I do not want to shoot you," she rasped. Nathaniel stayed still in the saddle. "Then do not." They stared at each other a few seconds longer. His horse shifted. The woman swayed where she crouched, thin as a winter coyote and twice as desperate. "I came to kill you," she said, voice hoarse. "I figured." He dismounted gently, letting the reins fall. "But it looks like you need water more than I need dying." She blinked. Her whole body looked like it might give out. Then she collapsed forward into the dirt. Nathaniel caught her before her face hit the ground. She woke 3 days later, bolting upright in the bed Nathaniel's late wife used to make. Her fingers clawed for the pistol, but it was gone. Instead, a small, freckled girl sat nearby, holding a cloth to the woman's forehead. "Papa said not to leave your side," the girl whispered, eyes wide. The woman stared at her for a long time. "What is this place?" "Our ranch," the girl said. "You were real sick." Nathaniel appeared in the doorway then, wiping his hands on a rag. "You are awake." The woman narrowed her eyes. "Why am I here?" "You collapsed," he said. "I could not leave you out there to die." "You should have." Nathaniel crossed the room and set the rag on the table. "You said you came to kill me, so I would like to know why. But not today. You need food and rest." "I do not want your help." "Too late. My daughter already gave you broth." "You are officially a charity case now." She glanced back at the girl, who gave her a small smile. "What is her name?" "Grace," Nathaniel said. "She is 8. The woman looked away. "I did not come here to hurt her." "I believe you," he said quietly. "What is your name?" She hesitated. "Faye O'Connell." He nodded, then left the room. By the end of the week, Faye was walking again, though she moved like someone who had been hunted too long. She barely ate. She did not ask questions. She watched Nathaniel like a hawk. But she never touched the pistol he had left on the windowsill. One afternoon, Faye stood by the barn, arms crossed, watching Nathaniel teach Grace how to mend a saddle strap. "You are calm for a man someone tried to kill," she said. Nathaniel looked up. "You did not try." "You fainted." "I meant to." "Do you still mean to?" She looked away. He rose and came to stand beside her. "Tell me the truth. Why did you come for me?" "My brother," she said finally. 4 years ago, he died in Wyoming. He was working a cattle job. The man who hired him never paid him. Left him stranded. He died trying to walk home. I found the letter. The man's name was Nathaniel Jensen. Nathaniel exhaled slow. "I never hired anyone named O'Connell." He used a fake name. "Ben Dorsey." Nathaniel went quiet. "I remember Ben. He was young. Maybe 19. You left him." "I did not leave him. He left, walked off after a fight with the foreman. No one knew where he went. I looked for him." Faye's voice cracked. "He died in the snow." Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair. "I am sorry." "I truly am." "I wanted to believe you were a monster," she said. "It made it easier." He looked at her. "And now," she looked away. "Now I do not know what to believe." By June, Faye was still at the ranch. She helped Grace with reading in the afternoons. She mended shirts and started cooking, even though she never said she would stay. Nathaniel gave her space, but he noticed the way she lingered by the porch after supper. Late one evening, as the sun dropped behind the hills and the sky turned the color of coal and fire, Faye sat on the porch steps. Nathaniel joined her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "I keep thinking I should leave," she said. "Why have you not?" Faye hesitated. "I do not know where I would go." They sat in silence a while. Then she said, "You are not what I expected." "I get that a lot." I thought you were cruel. I thought you would be angry when I told you. I was sad, he said. That is different. She looked over at him. I do not know what to do now. You could stay, he said, voice quiet, not because you owe me anything, but because you are good for Grace. And because I like having you here. Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. It is strange. I came here to kill you. Now I am wondering what it would feel like to touch your hand. He reached out without a word and offered it. She took it. Grace made them laugh that night at supper, telling a story about a chicken that got its foot stuck in the fence. Faye laughed until she had tears in her eyes. Nathaniel watched her, heart warm. He never thought someone would sit in that chair again. Never thought Grace would look at a woman like that with trust. Later, as the fire cracked in the hearth and Grace slept upstairs, Nathaniel found Faye watching the stars from the porch. It feels like the world ended and started over again, she said softly. He stepped beside her. Maybe it did. She turned her head toward him, and for the first time she looked like she was not running from anything. I never thought I could feel this peaceful, she said. He reached for her hand again. She let him. Neither of them spoke after that. They did not need to. On the first morning of July, Nathaniel found Faye kneeling in the garden with her sleeves rolled high and dirt smeared across her cheek. She was tracing a line in the soil with one finger, her brow drawn in thought. The early light caught the curve of her shoulder, and something shifted in him, quiet but certain. He stepped closer, keeping his boots to the path. You planning to plant something? She didn't look up. Grace said the carrots never come in right. I think the rows are too close. You know something about farming. My mother did. I watched her hands more than I listened to her mouth. Nathaniel crouched beside her. Where was that? Eastern Kansas. Before the border got torn up. Her voice was steady, but her hand trembled slightly as she pressed it to the sun-warmed earth. We left in '61. It was never home after that. He waited. She died outside Fort Scott, typhoid. I was 12. My brother and I just kept going. Nathaniel let the silence lie between them. Faye finally turned her head. I never told Grace that. She doesn't need to know everything. No, but she's smart. She sees. She sees that you care. Faye wiped her hands on her skirt and stood. I should check the wash. Nathaniel watched her go, the hem of her dress brushing the high grass. She moved like she had a destination, but no finish line. That afternoon, when the clouds rolled in low and heavy, Faye brought in the laundry without being asked. She folded each piece with care, smoothing the lines from Grace's small dresses. Nathaniel came in from the barn as the first drops began to tap against the window panes. You're not afraid of storms, he asked, afraid of what comes after sometimes. Nathaniel leaned against the door frame. What do you mean? Rain's fine. It's the things that flood because of it. She set a folded shirt on the stack. Things don't stay buried like folks think, he nodded once. I know that. She glanced up, eyes unreadable. Do you? He stepped closer. You think I've never lost anything? Faye didn't answer. She just watched him, her arms crossed tight like she was holding herself in place. Nathaniel kept his voice low. I buried my wife 3 winters ago. She carried our second child too early. Faye didn't flinch, but her shoulders lowered. You never said, you never asked. Would you have told me if I had? Maybe not, but I think I would have wanted to. She sat down in the chair nearest the stove and looked out the window. It's strange. I never meant to stay this long. I know. I keep telling myself to leave before I forget how. And have you? I don't know, she whispered. Grace came in then, cheeks pink from running, holding a bundle of wildflowers. They're for the table, she said simply, and Faye gave her a smile that lasted longer than it used to. That evening, Nathaniel found Faye in the loft above the barn, where the air smelled of hay and the wind moved soft through the slats. She was sitting with her knees drawn up, staring out across the pasture as lightning flickered far off in the mountains. He climbed up and sat beside her, leaving space between them. I used to sleep in barns, she said, not ones this clean. Wherever I could. Easy to disappear when you don't look people in the eye. You look me in the eye. I didn't at first. No, you didn't. She turned her head. I'm still not sure if staying here is a kindness or a trick I'm playing on myself. Nathaniel looked out at the wide, dark stretch of land. You think I'd let you lie to yourself under my roof? I think you'd let me choose. That too, he glanced at her, but I hope you choose to stay. I don't know if I know how to be still. You've been still every night since June. She looked down at her hands. That doesn't feel like me. Maybe it is. They sat until the thunder faded into distance, and the moon rose pale behind the clouds. Nathaniel didn't move when Faye leaned against his shoulder. She didn't speak when he rested his arm around her back. The quiet settled like something earned. Below them, the horses shifted in their stalls. Somewhere in the dark, an owl called once and went quiet again. Faye lifted her head and looked at him fully. If I choose to stay, she said, it won't be because I'm lost. Nathaniel met her gaze. No. It'll be because you're home. Grace had taken to brushing the horses in the morning before the sun climbed fully over the hills. Nathaniel found her in the small corral, sleeves rolled to her elbows, offering a chunk of apple to the old bay gelding. Faye stood nearby, not interfering, just watching with that quiet attentiveness she gave to things that mattered. Nathaniel leaned against the fence. He won't bite her. I know, Faye said. She trusts him. He studied her profile in the soft light. And you? She didn't look away from Grace. I'm learning. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel rode out to check the north boundary. The rains had left ruts in the lower trails, and one of the fence posts had shifted. When he returned, he found Faye in the kitchen, sleeves damp, a pan of cornbread cooling beside the stove. She glanced at his mud-caked boots. Leave those by the door. He did. She poured him a tin cup of water and handed it over. You always ride alone, most days. You don't have anyone else working the land. Used to, not lately. She wiped her hands on a towel. Seems too much for one man. I manage. You don't have to. He took a sip, then set the cup down. You offering? I already do half the chores, she said. Might as well make it official. Nathaniel met her eyes. You want it to be, Faye nodded once. I'd like to be useful. That night, she brought out a small book she'd found tucked behind a row of jars in the pantry. It was a ledger, old entries in his wife's careful hand. She opened it without comment and began copying the seed counts into a new notebook. Nathaniel watched her from the chair by the fire. You don't have to do that, he said. I want to know what's here, she replied, so I can keep it right. He watched the curve of her spine as she leaned over the page, the way her fingers hesitated before each line. She wasn't just learning the numbers. She was learning the life. The next few days passed in a rhythm Nathaniel hadn't felt in years. Grace took to asking Faye to read aloud in the evenings, and Faye obliged without fuss, her voice steady even when the stories swerved toward loss. Nathaniel listened without speaking, his hands busy with mending or carving, but his eyes always drifted toward her. One evening, as dusk settled, Faye stood near the barn holding a worn compass she'd found in the tack room. She turned it slowly in her hand. You ever use one of those? He asked. I used to follow the sun instead, she said, but I like how this moves, like it's looking for something. He stepped closer. It only points north. Still, it doesn't waver. Nathaniel reached out, his fingers brushing hers as he took the compass. You think you found your direction? She didn't pull away. I think I might have. He closed her fingers around the compass and stepped back. Then keep it. That night, after Grace had gone to bed, they sat by the fire again. Faye held a piece of fabric in her lap, stitching a new hem into one of Grace's dresses. Nathaniel ran his thumb along the grain of a half-carved spoon. You ever think about having more? She asked. He looked up. Children, she nodded. I used to, he said. Lately, I think more about quiet mornings, shared work, someone beside me who doesn't need fixing. Faye's eyes lingered on the fire. I never wanted a house before, not really. But now I think about what it would mean to stay, to grow something that doesn't vanish. Nathaniel set the spoon down. You'd have that here. You're sure? I've never been more. She folded the dress neatly and met his gaze. Then I want to stay. He rose and crossed the space between them. She stood to meet him, her hands steady now, eyes clear. When his arms came around her, she fit there like she'd always belonged. Outside, the wind moved soft through the grass, and the last light of day slipped behind the hills. Inside, the fire burned steady, and for the first time in a long while, there was nothing left unsaid. The hay harvest came late that year. The rains that swept through in June had left the grass high but patchy, and Nathaniel spent long hours walking the fields before ever hitching the mower. When he returned one afternoon with his back aching and sweat drying in the creases of his neck, he found Fay kneeling behind the shed, coaxing a stray cat from beneath a broken barrel. "You don't need another mouth to feed," he said, setting his gloves on the porch rail. Fay didn't turn. "I'm not feeding him, yet. He's half wild." So was I. Nathaniel watched as the cat crept forward, ribs sharp beneath its fur. Fay held her hand steady until it sniffed her fingers, then darted back under cover. "Grace, name it yet. She's calling it Juniper. Says it looks like the kind of thing that survives in dry places." Nathaniel sat on the steps, pulling off his boots. "That sounds like something you'd say." Fay stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. "She listens to me. She trusts you." Fay's voice softened. "I never thought I'd be someone a child counted on. You are." She looked at him then, not for confirmation, just to see if he meant it. Whatever she found in his face, it made her nod once and walk toward the pump to wash her hands. Later, while Grace napped with her face buried in the crook of her arm, Fay stood in the upstairs room Nathaniel had cleared for her. She'd unpacked a few spare clothes, a small embroidered cloth, and a knife with a bone handle. She laid her palm against the windowsill and watched the wind ripple through the cottonwoods. Nathaniel came to the doorway but didn't cross in. "You miss the road." "I miss Ben," she said quietly, "but not the running." He leaned against the frame. "You ever think about marrying again?" She turned her head slowly. "That's not a question a man asks unless he's already decided something." "I've decided I want to grow old beside someone I respect." Fay didn't speak for a long moment. "I've never been anyone's wife. I've only been one woman's husband, but I believe I've got room to try again. If you do." She stepped toward him, hands loose at her sides. "I don't know what kind of wife I'd be." Nathaniel's reply was quiet. "You're already the kind of woman I'd want one to be." They didn't touch, not yet, but she stood close enough that the space between them felt like a promise. 2 days later, they hitched the wagon and drove into town. Grace sat between them with her hands folded around a small basket of eggs meant for trading. The main road was busy with wagons hauling seed and tools, and a preacher's boy called greetings from the porch of the general store. Fay kept her eyes forward as they passed the chapel, her jaw tight. "You all right?" Nathaniel asked. "I haven't stepped inside a church since I was 16. You don't have to today. I want to, just haven't made peace with it yet." He didn't press her. Instead, he lifted Grace from the wagon and helped Fay down after, his hand lingering at the small of her back longer than it once would have. At the mercantile, Mrs. Langley behind the counter raised her brows at the sight of Fay. "Didn't expect to see you back," she said. "I didn't expect to stay," Fay answered, "but I'm learning to change my mind." Nathaniel exchanged coin for salt and a small bolt of cotton. Grace picked out a packet of seeds, sweet peas, pale pink on the front, and Fay nodded her approval without a word. On the ride back, the wind tugged at the brim of her hat. She looked out at the hills with a gaze that had stopped searching for somewhere else. "I used to think the only way to keep from losing something was never to hold it too close," she said. Nathaniel guided the reins one-handed. "And now I think I was just afraid of being left. You're not alone anymore, Fay." She looked over at him, and this time she reached across Grace's lap and laid her hand in his. The road home stretched long and straight ahead, the sun warm on their shoulders. Fay didn't let go. By late August, the The dry heat had hardened the creek beds and turned the grass brittle beneath every step. The days ran long and lean, filled with work that left hands raw and backs sore. But Faye rose early with Nathaniel each morning and moved through the hours with the steady rhythm of someone who had decided to be part of something, not just pass through it. She was in the root cellar sorting jars when Nathaniel came down holding a folded piece of paper. "There's been a letter from Bridger," he said. Faye stood, wiping her palms on her apron. "Is that where you got the new bull last year?" He nodded. "Foreman wrote saying they've got a small herd needing trail hands. He asked if I knew anyone." She tilted her head. "You thinking of taking it?" "I thought I might send someone else if we had someone, but we don't." She held his gaze. "You don't have to take on more. It's not more, it's steady coin." Faye looked toward the stairs. "How long would you be gone?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. She stepped closer. "You think I can't run things while you're gone?" "I know you can," he said. "I just don't want to be away. You've been away before." "Not from this." Her voice dropped. "Then don't go." He folded the paper and tucked it into his coat. "I won't." That night, while Grace slept in the next room, Faye stood beside the stove, hands wrapped around a tin cup. She didn't speak at first. Nathaniel watched her from the table. "I've spent most of my life not asking for anything," she said finally. "Because when you don't ask, there's nothing to lose." Nathaniel didn't interrupt. "But I want this," she whispered. "This house, this land, you, Grace." He stood and crossed to her. "You already have us. I want to marry you." His breath caught just once. "You sure?" "Yes." He touched her cheek, rough thumb brushing the edge of her jaw. "Then let's not wait." They were married the following Sunday, not in the church in town, but beneath the cottonwoods near the southern pasture. Grace wore a dress Faye had stitched from scraps, and Nathaniel stood in a clean shirt with his boots newly polished. The preacher was an old friend of Nathaniel's, who came with his wife and a basket of bread still warm. Faye didn't wear white. She wore the pale blue dress she'd traded for in town, the one Grace had said made her look like a summer sky. After the vows were spoken, Grace placed a small sprig of sage in Faye's hand. "It means strength," she said. Faye kissed her forehead. "Then I'll carry it." They shared bread and coffee in the shade, and when the sun dipped low, Nathaniel took Faye's hand and led her back toward the house, their shadows stretching long behind them. That evening, as the light faded through the shutters, Faye stood barefoot by the window, watching the last streaks of color burn away. Nathaniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You all right? I never thought I'd have a place that felt like mine." He kissed her shoulder, his voice warm at her ear. "It's ours." She turned in his arms, her hands resting on his chest. "I want to give Grace a sister." He blinked once, then smiled slow. "You sure?" Faye nodded. "I want to raise her where she knows what it looks like to be loved steady." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Then we'll make a life full of that." Years passed in quiet rhythms. The seasons turned, the land gave and took, and the fences held fast. Faye brought a daughter into the world one cold spring morning, her cries loud and strong. They named her Eliza. Grace, older then, held her with the awe of someone who'd wished for something and been given more. Faye taught both girls to read and ride. Nathaniel carved them a wooden swing that hung from the old cottonwood near the porch. They planted a row of sweet peas along the fence, where the blooms returned each year without fail. They never left the ranch. They didn't need to. Love had rooted deep, and every morning Faye woke with Nathaniel's hand curled around hers, steady as the sun rising over the hills.